It's impossible. There's not one story. There are stories that come to my mind. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years, so they come in different forms. I worked in print, I've worked in TV, and now radio. That's a hard question. Probably one that I'll never forget is when I did a story on the Memphis Belle and the original crew members. There were still several surviving members, and we put them in their different places and where they served, and to speak with these veterans about what they did and their service. And then we went up in a B-17, got all that, B-17 after that. But yeah, I think it was probably doing a story about the crew of the Memphis Belle and being in their environment and talking to them about what they saw and how it changed them. Being around older folks. I like talking to people who are older.
Good question. Oh, man. I think news reporting holds a really important place in our society. We can even whittle that down to in our homes, but the goal is information and education. You know, our world is so diverse. We have people from so many different backgrounds, and when we get to tune into a broadcast, a news broadcast, we get to learn about a person or an issue from our neck of the woods or someplace totally different. And that reporting makes us more aware of what other people, our extended neighbors, right, our long distance neighbors, what other people are dealing with, the issues that they talk about when they're sitting around their kitchen table. Reporting is a wonderful gift, I like to think of it, where we get the chance to kind of indulge in a daily life classroom, allowing us to peek inside the lives of people down south, out west, in the Midlands of South Carolina, down to the Low Country.
So I think the most impactful stories that I've worked on haven't been massive statewide impacts. When I was at the Aiken Standard, for example, this was a very hyper-local story, but we wrote about ice storm debris being left on the ground after the 2014 ice storm, and people were trying to point the finger at who was responsible for picking up this ice storm debris. And while that is an incredibly small example of a story, it had so much impact because everybody cared about it. They were driving over it when they would, leave their homes, and they would see it all the time, and it was affecting the economy and tourism and things like that. And that wound up being one of the first stories that I ever did where I had to file a public records request, where I had to go head-to-head with the then city manager over why the city was picking up the storm debris and not the state picking up the storm debris. But that taught me a lot about how to be a better, more aggressive reporter. Another story that I'm particularly proud of covering the State House is that the Senate did not, at a certain point, it did not have a sexual harassment policy at all. And while that might not sound like weird, it was very unique that this chamber did not have any kind of rules dictating that is not appropriate behavior. And so we were able to get the Senate to, for the first time, draft a sex harassment policy. And so again, very small, but I was very proud about that because oftentimes we reporters don't do this to necessarily make change. And so when we do see something, a result after our reporting, it can be a bit of a humbling experience to know that we were, in some very small way, a part of that.
South Carolina ETV and public radio have been a trusted news source for South Carolina for more than 60 years, covering the issues and events that affect our state.
We pride ourselves in covering all sides of the issue and focusing on the facts.
Sharing accurate information that keeps you informed are ways we earn your trust.
South Carolina ETV and Public Radio, always working for you.
Some advice for journalists would be just show up early, be somewhere on time, being reliable, being dependable, being a strong communicator. That's the best advice you can get, because then you become indispensable, and that's what's important in this day and age. People need to be able to rely on you to tell the truth, to tell the story, to be accurate. That's really hard to do these days with social media playing such a big role, with so many different forces out there, misinformation, and just things that can be easily misconstrued. You need to be reliable, dependable, credible, and with that comes experience. And you do that over and over again, you become more credible. You work for better news outlets, you work for people that depend on you because they know you can do these things and tell these stories that impact people. You're a journalist, you're not out there telling your story, you're telling someone else's story. And I think that gets lost a lot of times. Like, we're here talking about the people behind the camera, behind the microphones, but we're not the story. It's the people out there, we're covering them. We don't pick the news is the news. It comes to us, we cover it. So we're not creating it, we're out there covering it because it impacts everybody.
South Carolina ETV and Public Radio have been a trusted news source for South Carolina for more than 60 years, covering the issues and events that affect our state.
We pride ourselves in covering all sides of the issue and focusing on the facts.
Sharing accurate information that keeps you informed are ways we earn your trust.
South Carolina ETV and Public Radio, always working for you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Adrienne Fairwell. I'm the president and CEO of South Carolina ETV and South Carolina Public Radio. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight to kick off our newest community-based initiative focused on local news and storytelling. At South Carolina ETV and Public Radio, our mission has always been rooted in service, bringing trusted information and meaningful stories to the communities we serve. Today is another step in deepening that commitment. Over the past year, we've sharpened our focus on local news. We're working hard to amplify South Carolina's people, issues, and voices. We know that what happens in our neighborhoods, our schools, and our state house directly shapes the lives of South Carolinians. For that reason, we continue to assess ways to enhance our collaboration with partners, expand local coverage offerings, and serve you, our audience, even better. We've a talented team of reporters who are dedicated to unbiased, fact-based storytelling, and you'll have a chance to hear from them shortly. And while we are excited for you to meet our amazing team, this next hour is not just about us, it's about you. Public media belongs to the people. This initiative is our way of making sure your voices guide our work. We want to understand what matters most in your community and how our work can better reflect the issues and stories that impact your daily lives. Together, we can ensure that public media continues to inform, connect, and strengthen our great state. We need you as partners. We need you in this work, and we thank you for the continued support that you give to South Carolina ETV and South Carolina Public Radio. We are truly grateful for the work and the service that you put in on a day-to-day basis. So with that, I'll turn the floor over now to our Assistant General Manager, Dr. Stephanie Cook. Part of her role includes leading the content team to include news and public affairs. So I thank you all so deeply for joining us tonight and for being a part of this very important conversation. Dr. Cook.
Thank you, President Farewell, for your leadership and for your commitment to news and public affairs. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone this evening and an honor to work with this team every day. I want to say welcome to those of you who are joining live and those who will be watching the replay of this session. Most of us are keenly aware, but I want to take just a moment to talk about why local journalism matters, why it matters to our communities, and why it matters to the future of our state. Local journalism connects us. It tells the stories of the neighborhoods, of schools, and our state house. It shines a light on the people and issues that shape our daily lives, stories that might otherwise go untold. Behind every headline, there's a neighbor, a family, a story that truly matters. And local journalism reminds us that what happens in town matters deeply next. It helps us to build understanding, empathy, and resilience. At SCETV and Public Radio, our commitment to those principles is more than just a promise. It's something that we deliver every day. In the past year alone, our team has produced more than 875 hours of local news content. And that includes programs like the South Carolina Lead, This Week in South Carolina, the local newscast that you hear on Morning Edition and All Things Considered, along with special features that take deeper dives into issues around topics that affect every corner of our state. Things like affordable housing, debt management, maternal health, the legislative session, and yes, the weather. While national headlines can sometimes feel distant, the type of local reporting that our team does ensures transparency and the connection right here at home. We are on a continuous quest to build trust, to facilitate transparency, and to increase accountability. And SCETV and Public Radio is uniquely positioned in the journalism landscape of our state. As the state's only public media entity, we are guided by one mission and one vision: to educate, connect, and strengthen the people of South Carolina. And we do that with the support of our trusted partners. When emergencies arise, public media plays an especially critical role. Through our partnership, for example, with the South Carolina Emergency Management Division, we're able to provide timely, reliable information that helps to keep our citizens safe. That's the power of local journalism, working hand in hand with public service. So to talk a little bit about this partnership with SCE EMD, I am pleased to welcome Stephen Batson, who serves as the Chief of Staff for the South Carolina Emergency Management Division. Mr. Batson started working at SCEMD in 2001, and he was promoted to his current position in 2013. We are thankful for the work that we are able to do together as agencies to support this great state. And we are thankful that Tropical Storm Imelda stayed offshore so that you could be here with us tonight. Stephen?
All right, well, thank you, and welcome to the South Carolina Emergency Management Division's Media Briefing Room. It's here in this room where Governor Nikki Haley or Governor Henry McMaster provided important life safety media briefings to all of you in South Carolina and around the world, in some cases, for those who are watching, to provide critical life safety information to help ensure folks knew what to do. Whether it was the 2014 ice storm, the 2015 flood, or tropical cyclones Matthew, Irma, Florence, Dorian, Ian, Adalia, Debbie, or Helene, there's never been a dull moment. And when it comes to running some of these press conferences, there's been some really big wildfires in our state, as well as even the COVID-19 pandemic was an important role for the Emergency Management Division and our partnership with ETV to get out emergency life safety information. So I really just want to take a few minutes to talk about this partnership. What does that look like? Why, what critical role does ETV play in helping the citizens of South Carolina when disasters strike or emergencies threaten? Before, during, and after emergencies, ETV is here with us in our State Emergency Operations Center and here in this media briefing room to provide critical technical support to help us reach a statewide audience. The cameras and radio and communication systems that they have access to provide a vital link to providing life safety information. So even just before a major event, ETV will come out to our site and set up a pool camera, a single camera that will allow media footage to be captured for all of our media partners, whether international, national, or state. That camera, the single camera in this one room, can help to share a lot of that information globally. Additionally, the press conferences that are held here are broadcast through live stream on the ETV's website, on ETV's television channels across the state, as well as the audio itself can be communicated across the radio. The crawl that you've maybe familiar with going across the bottom of the screen, letting you know which counties might be closed or other important life safety information, is also a critical capability that ETV provides for us. And just the many different communication pathways that they have make ETV a critical partner here in South Carolina with our emergency management. So what I want to do is just kind of stress just the connection that ETV has both here in this room as well as our state's Emergency Operations Center. So if you can manage just a little motion, we're gonna take this webinar just a little bit portable here with us. So bear with me. We're gonna leave the media briefing room and we're gonna head just down a hallway here and move into our state's Emergency Operations Center. Now today, at a nice quiet Thursday, nothing to worry about. No action and activities are taking place at this time. So you're walking into a room that would give you the ability, from just kind of a panoramic view here, of this is the state's Emergency Operations Center, where more than 200 state, federal, and local and private nonprofit partners would gather together to provide a critical capability of emergency management, both managing information, resources, and putting together important plans to make sure that all of our South Carolinians are prepared for what's coming, that everyone knows what to do and has the best life safety information available to them. So when this room's not activated, ETV also plays an important role in helping us to prepare. Our ETV's own Gavin Jackson helps us to put together artificial press briefings to our state agency partners to provide some realism in a governor's tabletop exercise or a discussion-based exercise where we simulate what we would be doing or how would we be responding to specific storms and key actions and activities. So again, it's just a daily partnership with ETV, their technology capabilities to reach all of South Carolina and around the world, and to be active partners with us and help us to prepare, respond, and recover during disasters. So it's a wonderful partnership, and we appreciate everything that ETV does to help SCEMD and our state partners. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for that behind the scenes peek at SCEMD. Thank you for your partnership, to you, Director Stinson, and the entire SCEMD team for all that you do to help support the state in times of emergencies. At this time, I am pleased to introduce our Director of News, Mr. Daryl Henson. Let me also say, though, you will have an opportunity to ask questions of Stephen towards the end. So if you have some, please drop them in the chat and we will revisit them. But at this time, I want to introduce Daryl, who has been with our team for almost a year, bringing a wealth of experience and a deep passion for local journalism. We are excited about the leadership that Daryl brings to our team.
And thank you, Dr. Cook, for that introduction and for your ongoing support of our news team. And also thank you to President Farewell for your visionary leadership. And thank you to our friends at SCEMD for their ongoing partnership. And it is indeed my pleasure to serve as news director here at SCETV and South Carolina Public Radio. It's a privilege to be with all of you today and to help kick off this news listening tour. And over the past year, I've had the honor of serving as news director here at SCETV and Public Radio. And I can say without any hesitation that this is one of the most dedicated, talented news teams I've ever worked with. So our reporters, they have a deep commitment to telling South Carolina stories, from covering the State House to shining a light on education, culture, and community issues. And they work every day to ensure our reporting matters to the people we serve right here in South Carolina. Now, during my first year, much of my focus has been on strengthening the foundation of our newsroom here, building collaboration across the team, refining workflows, and aligning our coverage to the needs of our audience here in South Carolina. And that restructuring has made us stronger and better prepared to deliver the kind of journalism our communities deserve. I've also had the opportunity to work on what we'll call special news assignments. The first was around the 10-year commemoration of the Emmanuel 9, and the most recent is around the 10-year commemoration of the 1,000-year flood. And before we get into introducing the team, let's take a quick look at the promo for this special, which airs tonight right here on ETV at 8 p.m.
What's your emergency? Water is about to start coming in my house. Man, the car about to go in the water. I mean, it's already in the water. I called earlier. The water is rising.
There was no escaping it if you were caught in it.
The water was flowing and it was moving cars and it was moving fast.
I mean, we saw the forecast and the radar, but nobody really expected what was coming.
Weathering the flood, South Carolina, 10 years later.
And again, you'll be able to see that special tonight right here on South Carolina ETV at 8 p.m. And thank you to everyone who worked with me on this project, including our chief meteorologist, Tim Miller, who you will get to meet in just a moment. And we have several content pieces across our ETV, radio, and digital platforms around the flood throughout the month. And we hope you will tune in tonight to watch. But first, we would also like to meet the members of our wonderful news and public affairs teams. And let me tell you just a bit about our producers, and you'll have an opportunity to hear directly from our reporters as well this evening. You will see a picture from left to right. Christina Thacker is one of the newest members of the team, having been in her role as the local newscast producer for Morning Edition and All Things Considered. Christina is a multimedia journalist with experience in both on-air reporting and production. And after graduating from the University of South Carolina with a bachelor's degree in broadcast journalism, she began her career at WIS-TV here in Columbia. In the middle of the screen there is Andrew A.T. Shire. He's our podcast producer, working on the popular public affairs podcast, SC Lead. After working on SC Public Radio productions like Piano Jazz and Songs and Travels with Michael Feinstein, Shire moved to Columbia, South Carolina, to become the engineering manager and audio engineer for South Carolina Public Radio. And on the far right here is Amy Crouch, who's the South Carolina ETV's Director of Government Transparency and Public Affairs. She is producer of This Week in South Carolina and serves as the lead producer on all live political events, including political debates and election night coverage. Amy began her career with SCETV and has been with the organization for over 20 years. And she's also a 4-time Emmy Award nominee and recipient of a 2016 Emmy Award for Remembering Charleston. We are happy and fortunate to have these talented individuals as part of this news team, ensuring our storytelling is first class. Now let's hear from each of our reporters, starting first tonight with Felicia Edie. She's our reporter and local host of Morning Edition.
Thank you, Daryl. Good evening, everyone. Again, Felicia Edie. I'm really glad to be here with you all this evening. I'm glad you took some time to let us into your homes, if you will, to learn a little bit about what we do and the passion behind it. But I started here at ETV, I guess about 10 years ago. I was a part of the first cohort, I like to call it, the first group of reporters ETV hired to cover the aftermath of the 2015 flood. So I started in February of 2016, and I got the wonderful opportunity to travel the state, to go to so many different towns that were impacted by this historic event, and to talk with so many people that led us into their yards and their homes, and got the opportunity to learn more about how the agencies that make South Carolina work. So I love that I came in as a part of that team, because I really did get the chance to learn more about my home state, the entities that make it work. The example that I like to use is when you're at home and you turn on your water faucet, you don't think about all of the people and the infrastructure that's involved to make that water come out that faucet. But during my time as a flood reporter, if you will, I got a clear understanding, a clear picture of all the things that make our beautiful state what it is, and the people involved in that, and got to talk with them about what they experienced. After that, we moved on to become a military reporter, if you will. So we cover, again, another really cool opportunity to learn more about the state. We are a big military state, and we got a chance to tell those stories as well before moving on to a general assignment role. And then now as the local host of Morning Edition, where I get to work very closely with our team of reporters that you will meet in just a minute to tell even more South Carolina stories.
Thank you, Felicia. And the next reporter you'll get to meet this evening is actually one of our news reporters who just actually moved into South Carolina this past week. And he's on deck now, and his name is Luis Alfredo Garcia. Luis.
Thank you, Daryl. Yeah, it's been 4 days, and already I am floored by the dedication I see from everyone. From the moment you step into the building to bunkering down in my office, I see people really committed to informing the public and making sure everyone has what they need to go about their day and to learn about the community around them. I think that's one of my favorite parts of public media. Like Daryl said, I'm Luis Alfredo Garcia, the newest reporter here at South Carolina ETV and Public Radio. And a little bit about myself: I'm from Florida, from Miami. I grew up there my whole life, went to the University of Florida, graduated with a bachelor's in journalism, and I had a year-long fellowship at a station in Orlando, Central Florida Public Media, an NPR affiliate. Through there, I covered agriculture, healthcare, the 2024 general election, Hurricanes Milton and Helene, and it really taught me how much I adore public media and being able to inform the public through anything, really. Here at SCE TV and Public Radio, big difference for me is there's so many channels that you can watch us on television, you can watch a YouTube video on social media, on our digital platforms, on the radio, and we get to be intimate with you, you know? Talking to someone on the radio, it's different than watching someone on TV. It's different than seeing them on a YouTube video. It's essentially having your eyes closed and letting someone tell you a story about somebody else right up in your ears. And I think that intimacy and teaching people about South Carolina, about what's going on around them, really drew me to the state from the moment I was first here. Felt oddly familiar, and I'm so glad that I'm going to be able to serve this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Lewis. And again, we are so happy to have moved you along the coast from Florida into South Carolina. And speaking of the coast, one of our veteran reporters there is Victoria Hanson.
Hey, Daryl, thank you so much. Yes, I am a veteran reporter for sure. I'm Victoria Hanson. I am the coastal reporter for South Carolina Public Radio, covering Myrtle Beach down to Hilton Head Island. I work out of my home here in Mount Pleasant, just outside of Charleston. I've been doing this for about 8 years now. But, you know, I've been a journalist for as long as I can remember. I feel funny saying this, but I grew up in Florida. I grew up in Gainesville, Florida. My father was a photojournalist, and I frequently went to work with him. And I just fell in love with newsrooms. You know, there weren't a lot of women back then. It was a lot of guys typing on typewriters and smoking cigarettes. And I don't know, I just thought it was fantastic. So I knew very early on what I wanted to do. And we moved around a lot because of my dad's job. And we ultimately ended up in Philadelphia, where at the age of 19, I got my first job writing obituaries for the Philadelphia Inquirer. The 5 W's weren't too difficult, but it was a great experience sitting next to some pretty incredible reporters like the mob reporter. And I think my old man wanted me to go into print, but I just had this bug for broadcasting, and I was going to Temple University and majoring in broadcasting. And I liked the idea of writing the pictures. That really excited me. So I went the TV route, and I got my first job right here in Charleston, South Carolina at the ABC affiliate. First as a reporter, then the weekend anchor, and I just loved it. And I really grew to love this community. A bigger opportunity came along, and that was Nashville, Tennessee. I was the main anchor there for, longer than I remember. But I enjoyed that too. It was a great community, and I learned a lot. And I kept reporting out in the field, a lot of live field anchoring with no scripts and just going off the cuff. But I missed Charleston terribly. So when I saw a main anchor job open at the same ABC affiliate where I started, much to my agent's dismay, I just said, I'm going back. And so we came back here, and I worked at the same ABC affiliate for about 10 years until they got sold. And that's when I found South Carolina Public Radio. I didn't want to go somewhere else for TV. I want to stay right here and cover the community that I love. And right now, I just really enjoy creating pictures with words. As Lewis said, radio is so intimate. So I feel like I've saved the best for last.
Thank you, Victoria. And again, pretty sure our audiences love that we have you on the coast there, keeping us informed. And as we work our way back up toward the Midlands, remember we talked about the State House and South Carolina lead. And next up is Mr. Gavin Jackson.
Thanks, Daryl. Yeah, just to pick up on what Victoria was talking about, I'm Gavin Jackson. I host the South Carolina Lead podcast and This Week in South Carolina. But what Victoria was talking about is funny because she wanted to go into broadcast instead of going to print. I went from print to broadcast. Thanks to Amy Crouch, who we were talking about. But the difference is, I think, between commercial broadcast and public media, and what we do here at South Carolina ETV and South Carolina Public Radio, and Victoria could back me up on this too, is that we have the time to really tell these stories, tell your stories, and spend time in the communities that matter, that make these stories possible. Instead of spending just 30 seconds, which we do sometimes on newscasts because of tight timing on a story, we can do 4 minutes. We can do podcast length shows on things. Scott Morgan can definitely talk about that in a minute. But it was funny just listening to, not quite funny, but listening to Stephen talk from EMD. And I'm just glad that we're not covering another storm this week because, you know, we just had the year anniversary of Helene. We're talking about the 10-year anniversary of the flood that I covered. Just so many things that come back, and then you realize just how important it is, everything that we do, because we get that information out during those critical times. So my journey started in outside Washington, D.C., where I grew up. I went to school at Kent State in Ohio. I knew what I wanted to do, kind of like Victoria from a young age. When I was 9 years old, I think I knew I wanted to be a photojournalist, and I got that degree, worked at my school newspaper all 4 years. And I've spent time in places like Lima, Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Florence, South Carolina. And while all these places were fantastic, and in some ways we got to do statewide stuff in those capital cities, nothing compares to South Carolina ETV and public radio, because our beat, everyone's beat here, is the entire state. While we do focus on certain areas and certain issues, we have the ability to cover in the entire state and do it well. And that's the advantage that we have here compared to some of our colleagues in the commercial news landscape. So again, we got the time, we have the ability, and we look forward to doing it more. I mean, just hearing from Steve again, talking about going from the briefing room to the field for these natural disasters that I've covered over the years, the wildfires up in the upstate in April. There's just a lot that we do. And we're going to Washington next week for This Week in South Carolina. Again, stuff that other reporters, other news outlets in the state, I'm sure they would love to do it, but they just don't have the ability to do it like we do here. So we're looking forward to partnering with folks across the state, even more so than we already are.
Okay, thank you there, Gavin. And as we continue to introduce staff members here, we will also have up next Mr. Reagan Knight, who is our ATC All Things Considered host.
Alrighty, hello everyone. My name is Reagan Knight. As Daryl mentioned, I am the All Things Considered host. So you will hear me usually in the afternoons, Monday through Friday. Going based off what everybody has been saying so far with my start in news, it goes back to when I was in high school. And I'm also from Florida. I was born and raised in north central Florida, where Ocala is. We're nicknamed Horse Capital of the World. But I lived in a small area called Denellen. And now Denellen is a very, very, very small town, mostly known for Rainbow Springs, right on the riverside in that area of part of Florida. In that area of Florida, it doesn't get much news coverage at all. And if there is news coverage, there's usually something negative that would always get put onto the commercial stations. And at the time, the public radio station and public media station that was broadcasted at the University of Florida wasn't even coming down into that neck of the woods in the coverage area. So I realized when I was in high school and working with TV production and a lot of other things that I wanted to be somewhat of a voice and just go across my entire county and talk to different people and businesses, especially for students in my high school. And I fell in love with storytelling and talking to people and being out and about in the field. So that led me to go to the University of Florida, and I got my bachelor's degree as well in journalism. And during my time at the University of Florida, COVID hit, Hurricane Ian hit, which was then more so down in South Florida around Fort Myers. And I got to work a lot on the public radio side with the University of Florida and got to mentor students and work with students and convince students to go step outside your comfort zone. Step outside of what you're really focusing on when it comes to reporting, and ask yourself, what type of stories do you want to share? Are you in the news for yourself, or are you in the news for the people that you serve? And at the end of the day, I entered this industry because I wanted to have that sense of purpose. And that purpose to me is to share everybody's stories and voices that cannot necessarily be shared through themselves. And I left the University of Florida, worked in the commercial side for a little while as a rock DJ, and had a lot of fun being a rock DJ, but I missed being out in the community and being out in the field. And South Carolina has always been the second state that I've always loved and cherished so much. Actually, the first introduction to South Carolina was in elementary school, and we had a partnership with a moving truck company across the entire country, and he came back with a brochure on Charleston. And I fell in love with Charleston and everything, and the history of Charleston and everything else. So I've been here now for about a year, Daryl, I would say, and it has been an incredible experience, an incredible journey, and I'm learning so much. And of course, still looking at other areas in South Carolina that may not necessarily have coverage. And I would say that the newscast has greatly expanded to cover smaller areas such as Casey, Elgin, Bennettsville, Latta, Landrum, and more. And the other thing about that I've been doing so far as well is trying to build partnerships and bringing safety to mind for all of South Carolina. The last thing I'll just mention here real quick is we just had National Railroad Safety Week a couple weeks ago, and I got to work with CSX, Norfolk Southern, Amtrak, and Operation Lifesaver that all play a vital role here in our state. And South Carolina ranks number 11 as the state with the most fatalities from trains in the entire country. So big on safety, really big on sharing everybody's stories, and it has been such a huge honor and privilege to be a part of this wonderful team and this organization. Thank you.
Okay, thank you there, Reagan. Glad we recruited you from Florida. Now we have you here in South Carolina. And speaking of safety and information, one of the things we want to make sure everyone gets an opportunity to hear on Morning Edition and All Things Considered is the weather. And so we have with us up next, Chief Meteorologist Tim Miller.
Gerald, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Good evening, all. I tell you, I don't know about you, but if you're sitting here listening to the folks speak and talk about their career, I'm just as enthralled as you are. Again, it's a pleasure to be a part of SCTV and radio as well, and it's just been a tremendous time. I've came to South Carolina in my 20s, and now I'm well, never mind. That doesn't matter. But over 30 years. In South Carolina, both in television and radio. And weather is always been a passion of mine ever since I was a kid. And the ability to be able to be a part of SCTV and public radio here is just what a great honor it is because I love South Carolina. It's an amazing state that we have from the mountains to the sea. We're a tiny state, but you can go 3,000 feet in the mountains, right? Which is a totally different weather forecast. Then you go to sea level, which is Charleston, which is another totally different forecast. So it is a challenging state, obviously, to do weather, but it is just absolutely a blast to do. I oversee a group of 4 other meteorologists that you probably will hear and see from time to time. All of us know South Carolina weather inside out and upside down. It was funny to hear Stephen with SCEMD name all the storms, right? He was naming one after other. People always ask me, Tim, do you remember this storm or that storm? And I thought, there's so many storms. How many can you remember, right? But I was really proud of that he was able to name those storms. Weather is a major impact. It's the number one reason people watch local news. And no matter what it is, and the ability for us to be able to tell the story in a very calm way to bring the temperature down, if you will, is what we do here at SCETV. And tonight, the flood made a major impact in my life, the 1,000-year flood. And tonight at 8 o'clock, I invite you to watch our very special program, the producers, the directors, and Daryl and his staff doing such a great job to produce an event that had an impact on all of our lives. That's tonight at 8 o'clock. And again, Daryl, it's an honor and privilege to be a part of everything that we're doing.
Thank you, Tim. And again, we're happy to have you on deck with us. And you talk about from the ocean to the mountains, when we say we cover the state of South Carolina, we also cover the upstate. And up next, we have our veteran reporter, Mr. Scott Morgan.
Thank you, Daryl. I'm not from Florida, but I'm also glad to be here. I've been here since 2019. Other than that, my story is not very interesting. I'm not as interesting as my colleagues. What I find interesting about all this is I'm looking very forward to being a part of the listening tour stops because my perspective has always been that journalism is a listening tour, and it's not about me. It's about you. I want to hear your stories. I want to know what you have to say. I love the work I do because I get to hear from people, and I say it all the time. I'm just the oracle. I'm just the dummy microphone guy. I just kind of stand there and listen to you. It's when you hear your neighbors talking, that's you. That's not me, And so they're your stories. I look forward to connecting more with you. I definitely want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear what you have to ask. I'm one of those guys you can ask anything to, and I hope I know the answer.
Yeah, thank you there, Scott. We appreciate it. And, not only Scott's story, but all of our reporters' stories, not only if you don't actually hear it on the radio during the newscast, you definitely can see that on our South Carolina Public Radio website. And there are a lot of folks behind the scene that will make sure those stories are there and the great placement of them. And that next person I'd like to introduce is Susan O'Kane.
Thank you, Daryl, and hello, everyone. It is truly an honor to be here and to be a part of this team. I actually joined the team about 4 weeks ago, so I am fresh, but I have been loving every minute of it. We truly have a great group of individuals that work here with the SCETV and South Carolina Public Radio family. I have been here all of my life. I'm a native of the Columbia area, specifically Chapin, went to the University of South Carolina, and quickly started from there in the news biz. So I spent about 13 years at WLTX, the CBS affiliate here in Columbia, as a news producer. and a newsroom manager. From there, I went and had the honor of serving as communications director for Riverbanks Zoo and Garden, where I was able to help connect communities through marketing, our public relations efforts, our guest engagement efforts, and really show the true wonderful stories that take place at the zoo. Then I decided I was going to spend a little time in county government, and so I served as the communications director for Richland County government for a couple of years and some change, and then decided I was going to move back to the tourism industry and tell those stories and connect communities in that fashion. And now I found myself here, and I'm going back to my roots, if you will, to help share those stories, support this team, do a lot of reporting on the web. If you need to get in touch with me, my information is on the website. But the 30-year history that I've had in some form or fashion professionally has been wonderful. And again, I look forward to continuing to share stories that matter to the Midlands and throughout the state here as part of the ETV family. Thank you.
And thank you, Susan, and welcome aboard again. And then thank you to everyone for those introductions. And you'll have an opportunity to engage with the reporters shortly. But we also have two reporters who are unable to join us this evening, and they've provided a recorded introduction so you can learn a little bit more about them as well.
I'm Russ McKinney, public affairs producer, reporter here at South Carolina Public Radio. I've been here since 2015. I primarily cover the State House, the governor's office, and other state office buildings, occasionally a little bit of politics. Absolutely enjoy what we do because, in my opinion, we're the only true statewide news source covering news and public affairs in the state. And I think that's so very important. And I think that's why we probably do the best job of anybody else in South Carolina that's attempting to cover that. Enjoy it very much, and I'm looking forward to the meeting. Thank you. I'm Russ.
Hi, I'm Mayan Schechter. I'm a reporter with South Carolina Public Radio and SCETV based here in Columbia. I have been here at ETV for a little over 2 years, but I've been a resident of the state and also been a reporter in the state for over 12 years. I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia. I moved to South Carolina after I graduated from college back in 2013. And most of my background has been in print. I worked for newspapers in Aiken, in Greenville, right here in Columbia, before making the jump a couple of years ago to public media. I've really enjoyed it. I get to be challenged in a much more creative way, and I've really enjoyed being able to put my voice behind my reporting. So it's like I get to talk to listeners, to South Carolinians, and even those beyond the state every single day. One thing that I really do love about being a reporter in the state is being able to share stories with South Carolinians that they may have never heard of. I primarily cover the South Carolina State House, and everything that happens up there affects you, your family, your community, your kids, your parents. And so I really enjoy being able to take what can be a very wonky topic and breaking it down in a much more digestible, tangible way for readers and for listeners so that they really understand the important decisions that are being made by our policymakers right here in Columbia. One of the things that I've really enjoyed over this past year is with my colleagues Gavin Jackson and Russ McKinney, we launched a legislative blog called the State House Gavel. We report every single day of session what lawmakers are doing. It's really kind of a great guide for South Carolinians to know what's happening in Columbia every single day. We do it through words, we do it through video, through audio, and that way it really almost feels like you're standing with us asking the questions of our important policymakers.
All right, and now I'll turn the floor back over to Dr. Cook.
Thank you, Daryl. If you didn't know before, hopefully you certainly understand now that we have an amazing team of journalists at South Carolina ETV and Public Radio. And as you've heard, they each bring a wealth of experience as well as a passion for public media, local journalism in South Carolina. They're also dedicated to mentoring and helping to develop young reporters around the state or young students who are interested in reporting. And so as a part of our listening and outreach tour, and you'll hear just a bit more about that in a moment, we will be connecting with schools around the state, through student journalism workshops and co-reporting with them on stories. There are approximately 20 plus college journalism programs and nearly 7,000 high school students enrolled in the Arts, AV, Tech, and Communications cluster. The field is ripe for engagement, and we look forward to doing our part to help shape the state's future reporting workforce. Tonight, we would like to shine light on one individual who is doing some great work in this space. And so it's my pleasure to introduce Jada Diaz, who is a student at Lugoff Elgin High School. At school, Jada is deeply involved in leadership and extracurricular activities. She serves as student council representative, Beta Club president, and member of the National Honor Society, where she leads and participates in service projects that strengthen her community. Jada is also the news producer for LETV, her school's broadcast program, and volunteers in her district's elementary schools as a ready reader with AmeriCorps, helping children to build literacy skills and confidence. Outside of academics and service, she enjoys playing tennis and shopping for clothes, both of which allow her to express her personality and creativity. So before you all hear from Jada, let's take a look at a snippet of a recent story that she produced in honor of Suicide Awareness Month in September.
The CDC reports that suicide is one of the leading causes of death in the United States. For teenagers, the reality is even more devastating. Suicide has become one of the greatest threats to their lives today. That's why the National Art Honor Society is using Suicide Awareness Month as a time to take action. Through inspiring posters, members are spreading messages of hope and encouragement, reminding those who may be struggling that they are not alone. For the National Art Honor Society, addressing suicide awareness is not something to be ashamed of. Instead, they use their art to reach others at LE, creating posters with positive messages and even context to call for those in crisis. One member shared their personal connection to suicide, allowing their experience to guide them in painting a butterfly, a powerful symbol of change and new beginnings.
Yeah, so I like to use art to help others, especially since I've lost a few people to suicide. It's very important to me.
For Mrs. Quam, watching her students pour their emotions into art is more than just creating something beautiful. It's a way for them to release their emotions and offer hope to others who may be struggling.
We want our National Art Honor Society club meetings to be a sanctuary, to be a safe place for all kinds of kids, and art can be a very helpful way to express your emotions and to work through things.
While posters can spark powerful conversations about suicide awareness, it's also up to the community to recognize the signs, speak up, and take action. Because suicide doesn't just affect one person. It ripples through families, friends, and entire communities. The National Art Honor Society's posters are more than just artwork. They're lifelines. Each stroke of paint carries a message of hope, reminding us to look out for one another and to never ignore the signs. Because when art inspires action, it has the power to save lives. Reporting for LETV, I'm Jada Diaz.
Thank you, Jada. The floor is yours.
Good evening. As Dr. Cook shared, my name is Jada Diaz, and I'm a student at Lugoff Elgin High School. I am thankful to my teacher, Mr. Branham, for supporting me in this opportunity to speak with you this evening. Thank you also to SC ETV and SC Public Radio for extending this opportunity that will allow students to work with SC ETV journalists as a part of local news outreach tour and listening sessions. The video you just watched is an example of a major topic that matters to our school community with September being National Suicide Awareness Month. To me, it is important to highlight this story because it gives a voice to those who feel voiceless and brings attention to a crisis that affects so many young lives. Suicide is one of the leading causes of death among teenagers, and yet too often these stories go untold. Telling this story and others like it is important because it enables us to shed light on the truth that are often concealed in silence. It often empowers us not only to report the facts, but to also humanize them. By using journalism to amplify discussions about suicide and mental health, we can break the stigma, hold institutions accountable, and remind students that their struggles deserve to be acknowledged and heard. I know that students like me will be excited to be able to gain insights on the principles of journalism that the SCETV team uses daily as they interview, fact check, and produce local news stories on SCETV multimedia platforms. And the opportunity to produce local news stories to share at the future town hall meetings at such a young age is so special. I'm happy to know that SCETV amplifies youth voices. Thank you for amplifying mine, and now I'll turn it back over to Dr. Cook.
And Daryl, I actually think I am tossing the baton to you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Cook. And thank you, Jada, for your excellent comments, for representing the youth voice and providing an example of the talent being developed in our local schools right here in South Carolina. And we honor everyone who's been impacted by suicide, and it's local stories like these that help to elevate messages of support and awareness of resources. Again, thank you, Jada. We're also excited to introduce young people to the world of public media. As we've already shared, public media is a unique player in the journalism landscape, and our mission is to provide trusted, independent reporting that truly serves the public. And we can only fulfill this mission successfully if we listen. That's why this listening and outreach tour is so important. And it's a chance for us to hear directly from you around the state about what issues you care most about, what stories need more attention, and how we can better reflect the voices of South Carolina. So starting in November, our team will be traveling around the state for 7 stops, and we would have loved to visit all 46 counties in the state. However, we took a strategic look at places designated as having news deserts or areas that have been less represented in our storytelling efforts. We will spend time in each of the designated areas working with students through local journalism workshops, learning about issues impacting their communities, and working to amplify the local voices. Each stop will culminate with a panel discussion where attendees will have an opportunity to meet the reporters and other stakeholders to share their thoughts about local journalism needs of the community. We want to listen, we want to connect. So please be sure to visit our website, stay connected to us on social, and sign up for our newsletters to ensure you stay informed about the exact tour dates and locations. And we look forward to embarking on this journey, learning from you and growing with you. And before we open up for the question and answers, we do want to give a couple of staff members who are online with us tonight a chance just to say hello, a little bit of background about them. And that's Ms. Thacker and Ms. Amy Crouch.
Oh, hello, everyone. Thank you, Daryl. Yes, my name is Christina Thacker. I am a producer for our newscast for All Things Considered and Morning Edition. You heard a little bit about me earlier in tonight's panel, but I worked at WIS-TV for 2 years after graduating from the University of South Carolina in 2023. I fell in love with media at a very young age. My father was very into radio, sports announcing, and I just kind of got thrown into this life, and I've loved every second of it. I am so excited to hear about the stories that matter to you and doing what I can from the production side to get those stories on the air. So I just want to thank everyone for their time tonight and letting us into your homes this evening.
And I'll jump in, I guess.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, hi, I'm Amy Crouch. I'm the Director of Public Affairs and Government Transparency. I have actually, this has been my first job. I came here 27 years ago. So yes, I started when I was 13. And I love everything there is about public media. I love everything there is about South Carolina. I grew up in Charleston. I went to school in Greenwood, and I have lived in Columbia ever since. I love working with politics, covering politics. I'm Gavin's producer for This Week in South Carolina, and I have worked on numerous public affairs shows since I've gotten here. And I'm very passionate about what we do, and I think it's very, very important. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy, and keep bringing those Emmys on deck for us here. And now it's time for our Q&A portion, and some of you may have submitted questions, ahead of time, and I know you've received some questions from our online audience across our various platforms. So I'll enlist the help of Ellen Dunn, our Director of Communications, to assist us with working through those questions received. Ellen?
Will do. Thanks, Daryl. Appreciate the opportunity. And this one I'm just going to kind of throw out to our field of journalists because it's something that you all have a perspective on and you've seen the industry change. You know, you think about when journalism first started, the way that we communicated with our audiences was through print. And that's also where journalism got started. And you're thinking about keeping local governments accountable because you had in those local communities a print journalist who went to these meetings and went to these hearings. And as the industry has changed with so many small local newspapers either fading out or being bought out by large entities, local journalism is more important than anything. And the work that you all do focuses on not only in our larger cities in South Carolina, but also looks into those local small areas. And I wonder if any of you can kind of talk about why that's so important and why you value it. Victoria, I'll start with you. Since you have 30 years of experience, I know you've seen it all. You've seen it in different parts of the country. So what's your perspective on local journalism and why it's so important?
Sorry about that. Can you hear me? I was just trying to unmute. Yeah, I've done print, I've done TV, and now I'm happily in radio. It's never been more important than it is right now. Quality journalism is so hard to find, and you need to donate. You need to pay for subscriptions to decent journalism. And what I find as somebody who's been around for quite a bit is that there aren't a lot of council meetings being covered. There aren't a lot of PIOs who will answer the phone anymore. If you call them, they'll say, well, it's on our Facebook page, it's on our social media. And I'll say, well, yeah, but I have a question. And I feel like now, especially in social media, as everything goes to those platforms, as a journalist, you have to be more persistent and ask more questions and get somebody on the phone. Back in the day, I used to go to the cop shops before I'd even go into the television stations just to sit around with officers and see what was going on. And that I'd get a story before I even went into work. So now I just think it's so important. I think that now is not the time to tune out. I find that young people aren't as interested in being journalists as they used to be. You don't have to go to journalism school. You just have to be curious. You just have to ask questions. You just have to want to know and explain and really care about the community that you cover. So lots of changes, but you know what? When it comes down to it, a good story is a good story, especially when it features the voices of people who otherwise go voiceless.
That's a great point. Thanks, Victoria. Would anyone else like to chime in?
Yeah, Ellen, I'll jump in too. Just having worked in, Florence for 4 years from 2011 to 2015 before I got to the Post and Courier in the State House. I think in Victoria covers this too, and Scott up in Rock Hill, spending time at that local level is so critical. I covered Florence District 1 School Board. I covered 5 different school boards in that area. I covered the city and the county. And I think it's really important too, and I think that's something that adds to our coverage and our capabilities is that our experience. I know we talk about that, but an example of that would be knowing what it's like at the city and county level, knowing what, a mill looks like on someone's tax bill and how that affects them. And then taking that knowledge, the local knowledge, especially in a community that's not one of our big three, like the Charlestons and the Greenvilles and the Columbias, taking that knowledge to the State House where I've been covering state politics, state news for 10 years now. And you understand the trickle down, right? I think you see, a lot of people always focus on Congress, they focus on the White House, and while those are important branches of government, they're always fighting. Look at what's going on right now. And in the State House in Columbia, there's not a shutdown. They have to pass a balanced budget every year. They're in there from January to May, and we're trying to tell you what's going on every day. So you know how it affects you, because again, while everyone is focused on DC, the big decisions are happening in Columbia. They're also happening in your city and county council chambers too. So I think we bring that expertise and that ability to elevate a lot of stories that we see at the local level too. Unfortunately, we can't cover every city and county council, even though they are all super important. Sometimes we have to rely on our media partners to elevate some of those stories, and then we can go deeper and eliminate more of those stories. But yeah, I mean, it's sad to see the news deserts. I'm glad that we're doing this initiative to see how we can fill these news deserts and partner with people to cover these stories, because if you don't know what's going on in your city council meeting, all of a sudden you get a tax bill and you're going to be outraged about what the taxes are for certain things. And that's just one example of how you need to know what's going on. And unfortunately, we lose more and more of that with the way that papers are going these days.
Makes sense. Thanks, Gavin. Stephen, I'm going to kind of talk to you a little bit about just the work that SCEMD does to communicate what's happening in terms of emergency management. I mean, I'm thinking back to this past weekend, looking there in your press room with the governor full of reporters, and our job was to get that information out. But can you talk a little bit about why especially ETV and broadcasting into those rural communities is so important?
Sure. And one of ETV's programs, they talk about FOMO, the fear of missing out. You talk about the fear of missing out when we think about emergencies. We definitely are just laser focused on making sure that everyone in South Carolina knows what they need to do in light of an emergency. So using as many different avenues to try to communicate a message. Certainly there's generational differences in how people consume media. Some focus on print, some radio, some television, and then a whole host of internet-based methods for news media delivery. So, trying to maximize our social media, our press releases, putting things into print so that folks can read those, emergency alerts, broadcasts, being able to hit a cell phone in case you're away from the house and not even connected, that maybe your phone would ring and tell you something very important that is going on very close to you. And certainly encouraging folks to stay connected or have our South Carolina Emergency Manager app on their phones so that they can receive those notifications as well, or registering for a code red notification as well, so that just that fear of missing out is always a big part of our planning process. We don't want to leave anybody behind.
Thank you. And Scott, when we think about local journalism, it all comes down to relationships. And one of the things that I always notice when I hear you talk in our news meetings, it's the relationships that you have with people to get that story from a different perspective. Most recently, you look back at 1 year since Helene, and you told stories that people may not have realized. Can you elaborate on why those relationships are so important between journalists and the members of their communities?
Sure, because without relationships, journalists have no story to tell from the communities. I mean, relationships are everything. It's not really rocket science. It's a matter of, I hold the public trust in my hands. I take that extremely seriously. And the reason I have the public trust in my hands is because people know they can trust me, and people know they can trust me because I talk to them. We were talking earlier about local journalism, and it's a lot like local politics. I mean, all the stuff that you hear at the national level is kind of theater. People, I like to know what they have to say. So you don't get into people's lives, and you don't get to know how these theatrical policies sometimes affect people on the local level, at the home level. I mean, everything that's going on, whether it's state level, local level, county levels, federal level or whatever, it's all at some point trickling down into people's kitchens, at their tables, and in their backyards and things like that. And if you want to know how the decisions people were putting in offices are really affecting people, you have to hear how people are really living with those decisions. And they're not going to talk to you if they don't believe in you. They're not going to talk to you if they don't trust you. And so if you don't have good relationships, you just do not have journalism. And if you don't have journalism, you don't have democracy. So I hope people keep talking to me.
Well, you're easy to talk to, that's for sure. Jada, the younger generation, how they view journalism is totally different. I mean, when you think about how somebody from my generation, Gen X, grew up, it was the three major networks, and then cable started to come into it. But your generation is consuming media through, most of the time, one of these. So how do you perceive news, and what is your generation looking for in the news that they consume? What do they want to know?
Yes, I think for my generation a lot, we mostly consume our news and and what we and our information from social media, obviously our phones. But I think the most important fact in, delivering news to youth and getting them to like really be active in it is one, making sure that they fact check all their information and making sure that we have, verified, certified information that is both true and accurate to what context is being used in, excuse me. And I think as a journalist myself and as someone who does broadcast, the most important part is just, being able to catch their attention and being able to, make sure they're engaged in their stories and making sure that they care about it, but also reporting on stories about youth, such as suicide, stuff that really impacts them and affects them.
Well, and I think that story that you did show that. You could see how important it was to the students and how much they wanted to make their voice heard, but in their way, from their platform and what they're used to. And you did a great job of that. So Tim, in news, we always talk about what's the number one reason most people tune in, and that is quite often for the weather. And you become extremely popular when we're looking at things off the coast. Last week, I remember we were in a meeting planning for these tropical systems, and you said, call me whenever, reach out to me whenever. So why is weather important? Not just, if I need my umbrella the next day, but just for general safety, emergency management, like what Stephen was talking about.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I was popular or infamous over the last couple of days, right? Because of what was going on. The deal is weather is, by the very nature of it, it affects everything that we do, right? It affects our lives in so many ways. We've seen that. I keep talking about the flood, the special areas in just about 25 minutes or so. It has a major impact on everything that we do. And the rubber meets the road here with this. The broadcast landscape is changing, right? Weather is the number one reason that drives local news across the country. It doesn't matter what market that you're in, because weather is frightening, right? And the media's made it a little bit on the frightening side. It's already frightening anyway. People have a lot of anxiety over weather. And I know this. I know this for a fact. So during the flood, I see it during just general thunderstorms. Then you talk about the tropics that heat up, and then it really becomes a lot. And the reality is, what we're doing is we're trying to disseminate information to not let people be scared and to give them information that is relevant to what they need to know without the frightening part of weather, right? And the reality is that we reach every nook and cranny of the state of South Carolina with this information, and not every radio or TV station does, especially from the broadcast side of it. Especially with information that we're able to get. A lot of stations now, because of the very nature of cuts and everything else, don't have the personnel to be able to do that. We understand that, and public safety is our number one directive and our number one goal. That public safety, when it comes to weather, is so vitally important, and weather is constantly changing all the time. So for us at SCETV and radio, public radio, it is a vital source of information news to provide to our public, and we understand the importance of how scary it is, and we try to, again, bring that temperature down and make it compatible to all of our audience.
Well, and as you mentioned, we are not far away from weathering the flood on SCE TV. So I'm going to toss it back to Daryl so that he can wrap us up for the evening so everyone has time to tune in.
Thank you, Ellen, and thank you all for joining us this evening. We hope it's been an informative opportunity to learn a little bit more about our mission, our reporters, and our plans for the news listening and outreach tour. And please be sure to stay connected to our social media channels. Visit us on the web at scetv.org and southcarolinapublicradio.org. You may connect with us via email to share information and story pitches at newsteam@scpublicradio.org. Many of our reporters also have their own individual contact information available on our website. We appreciate your support of public media. Have a great evening, and thanks for being here.